হ্যাঁ, ঝিলিক শুরু করো।
ঝিলিক শুরু কর।
নমস্কার, শুভ সন্ধ্যা। রাষ্ট্রবিজ্ঞান চর্চা কেন্দ্রের পক্ষ থেকে সকলকে জানাই আন্তরিক অভিনন্দন। আজ এই আলোচনা সভায় উপস্থিত রয়েছে ডক্টর শুভাশিস মোদক চৌধুরী। উপস্থিত রয়েছে রাষ্ট্রবিজ্ঞান চর্চা কেন্দ্রের অন্যান্য সদস্য এবং সদস্যবৃন্দগণ। উপস্থিত রয়েছে অরুণিমা ব্যানার্জি, প্রকাশ চক্রবর্তী এবং আমি ঝিলিক সাহা। আমি আপনাদের সামনে মহাশয়ের একটি সংক্ষিপ্ত বিবরণ তুলে ধরছি। শুভাশিস মোদক চৌধুরী হলেন একজন রিডার, অ্যাসোসিয়েট প্রফেসর অফ ইকোনমিক্স অ্যাট দ্য ইউনিভার্সিটি অফ বাথ, ইউকে। তার আগ্রহের বিষয়গুলি হলো কন্টেক্সট থিওরি, অ্যাপ্লিকেশন টু পাবলিক ইকোনমিক্স, পলিটিক্যাল ইকোনমি, এক্সপেরিমেন্টাল বিহেভিয়ারাল ইকোনমিক্স অ্যান্ড ইন্ডাস্ট্রিয়াল অর্গানাইজেশন। তার সার্ভে আর্টিকেলের মধ্যে রয়েছে দ্য ইকোনমিক্স অফ আইডেন্টিটি অ্যান্ড কনফ্লিক্ট, যেটি এখন অক্সফোর্ড রিসার্চ এনসাইক্লোপিডিয়া থেকে সহজেই ডাউনলোড করা যাবে। সারা বিশ্বে একদল গবেষক একটি অনলাইন দ্বি-সাপ্তাহিক প্রতিযোগিতা ও সংঘর্ষের বিষয়ে গ্লোবাল সেমিনার আয়োজন তিনি করেছেন। আজকে আলোচনার বিষয়বস্তু হচ্ছে দ্য ইকোনমিক্স অফ আইডেন্টিটি অ্যান্ড কনফ্লিক্ট। রাষ্ট্রবিজ্ঞান চর্চা কেন্দ্রের পক্ষ থেকে মহাশয়কে জানাই অসংখ্য ধন্যবাদ এত ব্যস্ততার মধ্যেও আমাদের সময় দেওয়ার জন্য। মহাশয়কে অনুরোধ করব আজকের আলোচনাটি শুরু করার জন্য। নমস্কার।
ধন্যবাদ ঝিলিক আর প্রকাশ দুজনকেই, এবং অন্যান্য রাষ্ট্রবিজ্ঞান চর্চার যারা আছে তাদের সবাইকে। একটা কথা বলি, সেটা হচ্ছে যে এখানে বোধহয় মোটামুটি সবাই বাঙালি, কিন্তু আমার প্রেজেন্টেশনটা এবং পেপারটা সবই ইংরেজিতে, ফলে আমি ইংরেজিতেই বলবো যদি তোমাদের অসুবিধা না হয়। আর যদি দরকার হয় মাঝে বাংলায় তো কথা বলা যেতেই পারে। আর যদি বলার সময় যদি তোমাদের কারো কোনো প্রশ্ন থাকে, আমি এখন পুরো ফুল স্ক্রিন করেছি, ফলে আমি কারোর ভিডিও বা কিছু দেখতে পাচ্ছি না। কারো যদি প্রশ্ন থাকে সঙ্গে সঙ্গে সেটা করলে ভালো হবে। হ্যাঁ, মানে মাইক অন করে প্রশ্নটা করো, এবং সে বাংলা ইংরেজি যাতেই করো, কিছু যায় আসে না। হ্যাঁ, মানে আমার সুবিধার জন্য আমি একটু ইংরেজিতেই বলছি, তা যদি তোমাদের কোনো আপত্তি না থাকে।
ঠিক আছে স্যার, তাহলে যখন যেমন প্রশ্ন আসতে থাকবে আমি আপনাকে জিজ্ঞেস করতে থাকবো।
হ্যাঁ, শিওর, ঠিক আছে। তাহলে আমি শুরু করি। So this is a survey article. Survey article in the sense that people have worked from many different areas trying to understand the relationship between identity and conflict. But there was not a single place where you can go and try to find out what we know till now. So I tried my best to bring different different research in one place. And let's start with this famous quote by Amartya Sen from his 2007 book Identity and Violence. So he says that violence is formatted by the imposition of singular and belligerent identities on gullible people, championed by proficient artisans of terror. So what he is saying here, that violence, conflict, and identity are all inherently deeply related. Now, when I say that I am trying to bring the knowledge base that was created by researchers in one place, when I say that, it's a broad area. So although I am an economist, a lot of contribution was done from the areas of psychology, political science, sociology, and so on. So in this presentation, I'm trying to bring some of the well-known results from economics, political science, psychology, and some sociology. Okay. To do so, first we need to define what is identity and how does it interact with conflict. So identity, মানে যাকে বাংলা আমরা বলি সত্তা, so that's a sense of oneself. Okay, so how you view yourself, and at the same time how other people view at you, that would be your identity. And when you have that identity, once you have such identity, say I view myself this way and I think other people view myself this way as well, then you create some in-group and out-group. You identify with other people who share the same identity with you and you call them in-group, and other people, you call them outgroup. One particularly straightforward example, আমরা যখন এখানে সবাই বাংলায় কথা বলছি, সবাই বাংলা থেকে এসেছি, আমরা ইমিডিয়েটলি আইডেন্টিফাই করতে পারি যে আমি একজন বাঙালি। আমি জানি আমি বাঙালি, এবং আমাকে বাইরে থেকে যারা দেখছে তারাও ভাবে যে আমি বাঙালি। ফলে এখানে যারা বাঙালি আছে তাদের সঙ্গে মানে আমি খুব সহজেই ভাবতে পারি তারা আমার ইন গ্রুপ, আমিও বাঙালি, তারাও বাঙালি। আর যারা বাঙালি না তারা হচ্ছে আউটগ্রুপ। তাহলে আইডেন্টিটি ইজ দ্য সেন্স অফ ওয়ান সেলফ হুইচ ডিটারমিনস ইন গ্রুপ অ্যান্ড আউটগ্রুপ। আর কনফ্লিক্ট বা সংঘর্ষ, এটাকে ইউ ক্যান ডিফাইন ইন মেনি ডিফারেন্ট ওয়েজ, বাট ওয়ান স্ট্রেট ফরওয়ার্ড ওয়ে উড বি is situation in which different people, they spend costly resources to resolve a dispute or to gain a reward or something. Irrespective of whether you win or lose, the resources you spend are gone. Think about war. In war, there might be a one winner or might be no winner, but all the things that people spend on army, on destroying other things and so on, those are gone. You can think conflict as also armless link, panja lorai. So two people are fighting, they both are spending a lot of effort to defeat the other person. One person is going to win, but all the effort they spend are gone. So those things are all called conflict. Okay. And there are plenty of examples of identity and conflict. Well, there was one example of identity and conflict very recently in Uttar Pradesh, in terms of somebody will be wearing a hijab or not, and other people are trying to fight on that. We know about that. But think about one of the oldest epics, Iliad. That's almost more than 3,000 years old. It narrates the story of conflict between two groups of people. One group identified themselves as the Greeks, another group identified themselves as Trojans, or the current Cyprus, Turkey, that area. Okay. Even recent times, I can give you example. So this is the time of Nazi Germany, where the Germans are killing people of Roma authority or ethnicity, or what we call these days gypsies. This is Jim Crow era in the US, in which you can see that these are the white supremacists. They are walking, and some of them are covering their face because they don't want to look at the black people. So here, where we are talking about ethnicity, here it's race. This is Africa, in which it's between the same race, all people are black here, but they have two different tribes, Hutu and Tutsi. They are fighting against each other. And this is again Uttar Pradesh, few years back, when there was a problem in Myanmar, Rohingya problem. At that time, in this case religion, Muslim people went and broke down the statue in one park of Buddha. So in all the cases, we see that there is conflict, but that conflict relates to some kind of identity, religion, ethnicity, race, nationality, but still those things are bringing conflict. So what are the features of identity? যখন আমরা সত্তা বলি, সত্তার মধ্যে কি কি থাকে? It can be minimal. আমি accurate identity করে দিতে পারি। আমি বলতে পারি যে people who are sitting in my left side is one group and right side is another group. This is completely random. But you will have this left group and right group identity then and there. Or it can be endogenous, মানে নিজে নিজে আইডেন্টি তৈরি হতে পারে এবং ডাইনামিক, সেটা চেঞ্জও হতে পারে। কি করে হয়? ফর এক্সাম্পল, আমি আজকে দেশে নেই, আমি বাইরে আছি, ফলে আমার একটা আইডেন্টিটি হচ্ছে ইমিগ্রেন্ট। আমি আজকে ডিসাইড করেছি যে আমি পড়াবো, ফলে আমার আইডেন্টিটি হচ্ছে টিচার। আমার ছেলে মেয়ে আছে, ফলে আমার আইডেন্টিটি হচ্ছে যে আমি প্যারেন্ট। এই আইডেন্টিটিগুলো কিন্তু আমাকে জোর করে দেয়নি, আমি নিজে মন থেকে চেয়েছি যে আমি বাইরে আসবো, সেই জন্য এসেছি। চেয়েছি যে আমি মানে পড়াবো, সেই জন্য পড়াচ্ছি। চেয়েছি যে আমি বাবা হব, সেই জন্য হয়েছি। আর এগুলো চেঞ্জ হতে পারে। আমি যদি আবার দেশে ফিরে যাই, তাহলে কিন্তু আমি আর ইমিগ্রেন্ট থাকবো না। ফলে বোথ আইডেন্টিটি এন্ডোজেনাস হতে পারে, ডাইনামিকও হতে পারে। At the same time, the conflict through which you can get identity, that can also change. যেমন religious identity had a bad effect on undivided India, which made India split into two parts, right? So religious identity, being Muslim created something called East Pakistan, erstwhile East Pakistan. However, within a few years, when linguistic identity, being Bengali, become prominent, it again made it East Pakistan to Bangladesh. So again, you can see that those identities are not endogenous, but those are dynamic. And it is also possible to destruct your identity. Let me give you two very, very stark examples. Suicide bomber. If I am a suicide bomber and I think that this is my identity and I am going to reach heaven or whatever, if I take up this job, then actually I am destroying myself. And much lower scale, but in the same philosophy is, if somebody is putting makeup to say that, oh, I want to look better, that's why I'm putting makeup, that means that person is destroying the original identity to get the makeup. Now, and you can see, I gave you a lot of example. So identity can create conflict because it brings in this in-group, out-group. Sometimes I care about in-group more than people about out-group. As a result, when I feel bad about my in-group, people probably I'll go and fight against out-group and so on and so forth. Last but not the least, it's not that identity always creates conflict. Many a time, conflicts also create identity. For example, the identity of people used to be Rohingya in Myanmar. There was conflict, and now they are in Bangladesh and their identity is refugee. Okay. By the way, please feel free to ask any question, or if you want to say anything, I'll be happy to answer. So there are two main aspects of identity. Okay, when we try to look at identity in a conflict, identity can make that they are part of a group that is called common identity, or it can make them feel they do not belong to that group. So they do not belong to the dominant group in the society. For example, I can always feel in England that I do not belong to the original English people group. I am an immigrant. Similarly, in the UP, currently, the Muslim people might think that we do not belong to the majority, which is Hindus. Okay. Now, there are theoretical studies, and when I say theoretical studies, I mean game theoretical mathematical models to try to understand how things are going on here. So try to find out how this kind of individual decision making with identity that affect when the people are behaving in conflict. And there are applied researchers who try to look at data, who try to run experiments and so on. I'm going to cover those. So what are we going to do here? We're going to survey the literature on theoretical, experimental, empirical literature from economics, political science, psychology. And this will be a complementary work with these two other surveys who look at similar kind of issues but not on conflict. They look at how identity can help people coordinate with each other and so on and so forth. And this is my plan. I'm going to cover a bit of theory. I'm not going to go through a lot of jargons and technicalities because I'm not very sure how much game theory you guys know. So probably I'll just tell you the story instead of going deep in the technicalities. But then I'll tell you some broad results from empirical literature, the data people got from field, and I'll spend some time on experimental literature where you actually run experiment with human being in the laboratory and try to find out how priming of identity, parochial altruism, those things affect people's behavior. Okay. Question is, why would I spend time on this? Why is it important? Well, if our identity relate to what make us feel better and what make us feel worse. As a result, when you're looking at welfare judgment, then identity will matter. In the end, how much GDP a country has is not as important as how well the people are living in this country, right? And identity matters a lot. And it can be beneficial for policy making as well. Because if you try to impose a particular policy which is in conflict with identity, it might give devastatingly wrong result. For example, if you have a healthy dose of nationalism, say that, what, we are all from this country, we are supposed to work hard and make our country better and so on, it's actually good. Having this healthy dose of identity of nationalism is good. Problem occurs when you have nationalism as xenophobia and jingoism. that, oh, we are the best and we are going to kill all other people who say otherwise and so on. So you have to make sure that you understand those when you are making policy. That's why it's quite important. Okay. So what I will do first, I will look at the theoretical background. And in theoretical background, I'm going to use a standard mathematical models that are used in economics, especially in game theory. However, instead of looking at the math, if you just listen to the intuition, probably that would be good enough. So let's look. So we are using the tools of something called contest theory. Contest theory is a situation in which people spend resources to win something. Even if they don't win, resources are gone. So essentially, it's conflict. So what they try to do, they try to maximize their expected payoff. What is expected payoff? When we are all spending resources to win something, who is going to win? Who is going to win the conflict? That depends on how much resources we are spending. India and Pakistan, they are fighting against each other. Who is going to win will depend on how much arms, how much defense budget they are spending. India is spending more, so of course India has a higher chance of winning a war. Now look at India and China. India is spending less than China, so if there is a war, there is a lower chance for India to win the war. So we are going to use those kind of mathematical ideas in this model. And what India will try to do, India will try to look at, if I spend this much of money, then my chance of winning is 50%. If I spend more, then it would be a bit higher. However, if I spend too much money on, say, defense, then I will not be able to produce hospitals, schools, and so on. So that is going to damage welfare at home as well. So India will try to, and I'm just saying India, all the countries should do that, try to balance in a way such that if there is a fight, I should be able to win, but at the same time, I'm not going to spend all my resources such that everything else is gone. So everybody will try to maximize their payoff. Okay. Where does identity come here? Identity comes here when, instead of thinking about, forget about India and Pakistan, think about individual people, they are fighting against each other. However, they actually care about, if I am fighting against one Indian, winning will make me feel good. However, if I fight against a Pakistani, then winning will make me feel even better. So those identity will bring the way we behave in conflict. Okay? So this is a bit technical thing. So it's trying to say that there are many different risk neutral players. Players are the people who are fighting against each other. They spend effort B, and that determines what is the probability of winning. In the end, this is the probability of winning. They are trying to maximize their expected payoff, which is, this is the probability of winning. If you win, you get a prize of V, and irrespective of you win or not, you have to pay your effort. Okay, people have worked a lot in this one, and there are different kind of identity models. We are going to show one example of preference-based identity model. What is preference-based? It says that your utility, your satisfaction level does not only depend on how much money you are winning. It also depends on relatively where you stand after winning that money. You know, it might be that you won 100 rupees and otherwise you'll be totally fine, totally happy. But then you realize all the other people in this room won 200 and you will feel bad. So that 100 will not be as satisfactory as knowing that other people did not win anything and I am the only one who won 100, right? So this mathematics is basically saying that your satisfaction level depends on how much you earn, how much your in-group people earn, okay, and how you care about in-group people. So if Bengalis are doing really well and you are doing well, but all the other Bengalis are doing well, you might be very happy, or you might be a bit jealous that, oh, I'm not doing as well. However, if a non-Bengalis are not doing that well, this is exactly what he's saying, that out-group people, this is what they're doing, then probably you'll be very happy. Okay, if you're like jingoistic Bengali person, you'll be very happy that, oh, we Bengalis are doing well, but not the non-Bengalis. Okay, so this is how these mathematical models are done, and then they solve for different situations and try to predict what would happen. So what I already told about players' identity affect their own payoff and payoff of the players with same identity and other identity. What it might happen is if you are a spiteful person, so you really care about other people doing bad, then this kind of identity might give extra kick in your satisfaction. Okay. Now, there is something called identity dependent externality as well. This idea says that it's not that I like my pair higher than my in-group people and even higher than out-group people. I also like if I am fighting in a conflict and if I don't win, I would rather want Sri Lanka to win, but not Pakistan. Okay, so we are playing World Cup. Of course, everybody wants India to win. However, people have a very strong preference that in case India does not win and is between Sri Lanka and Pakistan, I care about Sri Lanka to win, not Pakistan. So we have, depending on who is going to win, it gives me some kind of satisfaction or dissatisfaction. Okay. Now, these are the people who work on this area. Let me just tell you some broad results. Forget about this maths. The broad results. What Lister, the first person who brought this kind of idea in game theory, he showed that if we have that kind of preference, that it's not that only I care about my winning, I also care about whose rank is what, then a lot of results that we already talked about might be quite different. Okay, and this can be a much general kind of structure than what other people have done. Then Esteban and Ray is Debraj Ray. দেবরাজ রয় খুব নাম করা মানুষ, হয়তো নাম শুনেছেন। ওনারা they worked a lot in this area and they showed that, well, under very general structure in game theory, you can actually get some equilibrium and you can use the idea of polarization and fractionalization and those things. And I'm going to talk about polarization, fractionalization when I talk about empirical studies. So let's keep this one. Let me just tell you this. Close and Kovanok, they wrote 2 papers and they showed that if people care about this kind of externality dependent identity, so even if I don't win, I want Sri Lanka to win, not Pakistan. In that case, suppose there are 2 extremist parties and 1 moderate party. If people have that kind of features that I care about who is going to win if I don't win, in that case, moderate parties go down and 2 extremist parties will go up and they will rule the economy. That's what they found, and which might not be too far from reality. The moderate parties who actually have some sense, who try to talk about, okay, don't go to the extremism and so on, right now in India, they are not winning much. The extremist parties are winning. So I think their theoretical model actually can say something about what is going on in my country right now. And then Bakchi and other people, they talked about proxy war, sorry. So what they said is sometimes, think about what is going on in Syria. Many countries don't fight by themselves, but they send money for others to fight. So what they showed is it might be that if you have enough reward in fighting this kind of war, 2 different kind of people, might be America and Russia, they might actually make implicit alliance. Okay, so with this kind of proxy war, they will not fight directly, but they will make implicit alliance and help others how they fight. And let me skip these things because these are a bit different from this is more about identity than identity and conflict. And what this particular paper talked about, this is a very recent paper, 2013, what they talked about, where they try to find out whether a common identity can mitigate conflict. And I'll get back to that because this idea comes from Amartya Sen's book again. But what this Subhasish and Shayo, these people said that suppose you and I are fighting because you are Mohun Bagan and I'm East Bengal. However, after fighting some time, we realize that we both are Bengali. So, shall we stop fighting? They showed that, well, it depends. It depends on people's social status. It depends on how relative payoffs are. When you try to find out exactly what would be the final outcome, whether giving some uh, common identity is going to take out all the fighting, they are saying actually it's not going to happen. So if you have inequality in the society, if you have this kind of different social groups, even if we impose this kind of a common identity, that's not going to stop people fighting. And this is exactly what we see in many different tribes in Africa. Now, I was in a hurry and I tried to avoid as much technicality as possible, but I mentioned something about the theoretical literature. Um, any question on theory? If not, then I'll go to the evidences like empirical and so on. But okay, so let's look at the evidences. So these are the theory. Theory means people build mathematical models and predicted that this is what is going to happen. And quite a few cases, these mathematical models actually predict reality very well. However, it would be good to go collect data from actual real life and see what is going on, how identity and conflict are related and so. Okay. So there are two ways people do it. Empirical method. So people go to field, collect data, and analyze the data to find out what is going on. And it's mostly done by economists and political scientists. Or many a time it's not possible to get data because nobody is going to say that, oh, I spent this much of money to fight against you or something. In that case, you can bring actual human being in the experimental laboratory, let them play the games that we just discussed over the theoretical part, and see how they're actually behaving. They might not be behaving the way the games are saying. They might be behaving differently. I need to go back and change the theory. So these kind of things are mostly done by psychologists and economists. Okay. So the empirical ones have really good thing about it has direct evidence. You can get data from directly. However, you might actually not get data. And sometimes you'll not be able to identify what is determining what. That's not the problem for experimental studies. You have high control because you know exactly what people are doing in the lab and you can have straightforward identification. However, many a time, what we see in the laboratory might not be generalized into what is going on in the outside world. So we need both to understand the whole thing. Okay? So we'll first look at some of the empirical evidences. To look at the empirical evidences, what we are going to do, we are first going to talk about some two very crucial issues, polarization and fractionalization. Okay, I'm going to discuss what those are, and then we'll see how those things affect people's conflict behavior. So the main question when people collect data throughout the economy and try to find out, looking at the data, how conflict and identity are related, these two things are really important. What are the identity related determinants of conflict? And are those separate from economic determinants? Let me give you one example. If there is a conflict right now in Calcutta, and I see that it seems to be between Hindus and Muslims. So is it actually Hindus and Muslims? Or is it that seems to be poor people versus rich people? And seems to be the case that the Muslims are poor and Hindus are rich. So how do you tease those things effects out? So people look at those. Okay. And compared to theoretical experimental investigation, they use field data. And because field data is not always available, it's still developing. Okay. If some of you want to work in this area is still quite open. Okay. So couple of the, as I said, a couple of measures of ethnic division that are used a lot here. It's called fractionalization and polarization. What is fractionalization? So you go to the street and randomly pick up two people. What is the probability that they will belong to two different groups? So Go to the streets in Kolkata and go pick up two people and see, well, pick up a few thousand people and see how many of those pairs that you are picking up are different. Different in the sense that you can define one dimension of group. You can say Hindus versus Muslims, or you can say Bengali versus non-Bengali, and so on and so forth. Okay, this is a very well-known measure. It reflects the degrees of ethnic diversity that you see. You can use more than one dimension also. Okay, so when you have groups are more or less equal size, this F means fractionalization. It increases with the number of groups. Okay, and when everyone is from a different group, say I can say that I am a Bengali, my neighbor is Egyptian, this side is a British, this side is Ukrainian, and so on, then fractionalization will be really high. But if we are all in the same group, then there is no fractionalization. Okay, so some people showed that it's not a stable, significant relationship with conflict, this fractionalization. Then what does have relationship with conflict? Well, the next one is called polarization. So it's a measure of social antagonism, how unhappy you are within the society. Okay, when you are in a group and somebody else in another group, how alienated they feel with each other when they are from two different groups. Okay, or how different you feel given your own group from the others. Okay, so you all aggregate all this kind of interpersonal antagonism and find out a measure. It's called the polarization measure. Okay, as groups become smaller and smaller and smaller, there will be less and less polarization. Okay, polarization is the highest when you have only two big groups. So you can say that politically polarization is really high in the US because they have two big political groups, Republicans and Democrats. Polarization should be quite low in India because, okay, of course, there is a big political party right now, but all the other, there are small splinters of different parties. Splinters from Janata Dal, who has, now I can think about Janata Party, Rashtriya Janata Dal, Indian Janata Dal, Samajwadi Party, all those things are parts like splinters of Janata, actual Janata Dal, right? And then think about Congress, NCP, YSR Congress, Trinamool Congress, those are all splinters from the original Congress. So as a result, I would say India has less polarization in terms of politics. Okay. Now, one of the first papers that they try to find out what determines what identity determines conflict was by Collier and Hoffler in 1998. What they did, they looked at civil wars. Okay, and then they try to find out, is it what determines civil wars? Is it economic reason that people are poor, that's why they are fighting? Or is it ethno-linguistic identity, ethnicity, or their language that affects civil war? So they use data from 1816 until 1992. It's a lot of data. And they turned out to be the case that both economic reason and ethno-linguistic reason are significant. However, the more fractionalization you have, that does not always mean you will have more and more conflict. What they found is, as people getting more fractionalized in a society, conflict goes up. But after some time, if there is too many fraction, conflict doesn't go down. That's what they find. Okay. So moderate level of fractionalization affect the conflict the most. It's like inverted U-shaped relationship between them. Okay. This is another beautiful paper by Reinhard Kurel. What she did, she looked at the effects of religion and language-related identity in the intensity of civil war again. Okay, and then they try to find out whether political system can reduce such fight. She uses much recent data, 1960 to 1995. Okay, she uses civil war, level of democracy, what is the political system, and so on and so forth. Fragmentation, polarization, and so on and so forth. Okay, what she found is um, a measure of identity that is called enemies diversity in Africa and religious polarization, those two are significant prediction of conflict. Okay, how tribal you are and how much you care for your religion, those two ends up being in conflict. linguistic polarization did not turn out to be a big measure of conflict. You understand why from the previous paper, that because there are so many small different languages, language does not make fight people much, but religion does. And what they also find out, a more democratic system significantly reduces the occurrence of civil war. Democratic system that does not always mean a democracy. Okay, it might be that we are in a democracy, but one party is so powerful, they are sort of autocrat. In that case, there will be more civil war, more fight. But if there is a healthy democratic system in which there are different political parties, they are trying hard to win the election and so on, that will actually reduce fight. That's what they find. Okay? Now, there might be social distance among identity groups. So, for example, there might be two identity groups, Bangal and Ghoti. Okay? Bangal is an identity group, Ghoti is an identity group. And then you can think of Bangal versus, say, Bihari. Now, when you are thinking about social distance, Bangal and Ghoti don't have much social distance. They are very close. However, Bangal and Bihari they have much longer social distance, right? In terms of, if you think about two societies are how distant they are from each other and so on. And of course, when you think about Bengali versus, say, Telugu, the distance becomes even bigger, longer. So Esteban and Ray, they tried to look at the effect of these three measures that we talked about: polarization, fractionalization, and they also use some index of linguistic diversity on conflict. And it turns out that polarization is more significant when the winners enjoy a public good reward. Public good reward means whoever wins, their whole group wins, not one person. And fractionalization is better when it's a private good reward. That means winners just take their reward and then just run away. They don't have to share with their group. So this is a very important result because different conflict have different kind of consequences. Some consequence gives public good reward, some consequence give private good reward. And we can see that in both two different cases, polarization and fractionalization play two different roles. And I think, no, this is not the last. This is last, but শেষের আগেরটা এটা এবং this is one of my most favorite paper. This is again written by Debraj Rai, trying to find out again what determines this kind of conflict and riots and so on. Is it ethnicity, is it religion, or is it economics? So theoretically, as income of a particular group increases, the conflict intensity against that group should increase. Remember, when you talked about theory, I said that, oh, I care about my group. If I am earning a lot, that's good. If my group is earning a lot, that is also good. But I don't like my opposition group earning a lot, right? So if my opposite group is earning a lot and it is possible for me to go and damage them, I will go and do so. So Mitra and Rai, they try to test that theory with Hindu and Muslim in India with that data from the period 1979 to 2000. So they define ethnic conflict as number of casualties, number of death, number of riot outbreak, and all those things. Okay. And I looked at their data. It's amazing. Around this time, you cannot even find this kind of things in West Bengal at all. Data from other states. I don't know what happened now, but yeah, West Bengal pretty clean in terms of Hindu and Muslim riots and so on. Anyway, so what they show is the per capita expenditure by Hindus decreases the likelihood of conflict, which means when Hindus become more and more rich, they're spending a lot and so on, then we don't see much conflict. However, if Muslim per capita expenditure increases 1%, then conflict goes up almost 10%. So what does it mean? It means Muslims, the minorities in those areas in India, if they are doing well economically, then somehow riot starts, damage their property, make them poor, and then things are fine. Once they start prospering, again riot starts. So essentially, although we are calling it Hindu, Muslim, and all those things, and of course it is Hindu, Muslim, and so on, But it seems like Hindu groups are largely been the aggressor in Hindu-Muslim violence in India. And what determines that? So the leaders who are running for it, what determines is the economics. They do not like the Muslims to prosper. That's what this paper says. Found. Question is, can you extend this one from Hindu Muslim to different caste within Hindus? Say there can be higher caste, lower caste, and you can see the same thing. Well, Dasgupta and Pal, they extend this idea to caste related conflict. And they showed that untouchability and related conflict depends on intergroup distribution of resources. Okay. However, when you look at relative increase in the resources within lower caste, we don't see that much. So there is a bit of effect, but not as much as Hindu Muslim. Okay? And that is the part for empirical results. Any questions from empirical results? Okay. If not, then let me go to experimental evidences. Now, what happens in experimental evidences? Well, as you can see from this picture, what happens is we are going to bring human being, we call them subjects, to come and play the same game, but we will keep one group as control where we don't change anything. Another group we call treatment, not out of control, in which we change a little bit and see how their two behaviors are different, and that determines the effect of what we are changing. Okay, it might sound abstract, but I'll show you some examples pretty soon. So in experiment, researchers try to employ both natural and minimal identities. Okay, what is natural identity? As I said, whatever identity we have, we are born with, and so on. For example, I can call myself Indian, I can call myself a brown person, I can call myself male. Those are all natural identity. However, there can also be minimal identity. We can just give some random identity assigned to the subject. Okay, so for example, Chen and Lee, they did a pretty nice way of doing it, and people follow that. They give a pair of painting. You might give a painting by Jamini Rai versus Ganesh Pine. Okay, so you give a few pairs of painting and ask the subjects, which one do you like, left side or right side? Now, if it turns out that people like left side painting, that is Jamini Rai painting more, then we call them Jamini Rai group. If they like Ganesh Pine painting more, you can call them Ganesh Pine group. So you can see that there is somehow we are saying that you belong to this group because you like this painting more. But this is the minimal one. It's not real. It's not natural. Okay, people use those. So let's talk about the very first ever experiment that was run on identity and conflict, and it goes way, way, way before any empirical or theoretical research. This is done by a couple of psychologists in 1954. So what they did, so they ran this experiment in 1954, but they wrote about this experiment in a book that came out in 1961. It's called Roberts Cave Experiment. So they ran in 1954 in a state park, Roberts Cave State Park, that's why their name, in Oklahoma. What they did, they brought 22 pre-teenage boys, like 12, 13 years old boys, and randomly assigned into two groups. Okay, and they made the group identity quite salient. So one group's name was Rattlers and the other group name was Eagles. Okay, you can see that here are the Rattlers and they are the Eagles. They are looking at each other and they are praying. Here the Eagles are praying so that they can win and so. So I'm not sure if you have been in Boy Scout or guides. I was there, and we used to be in this kind of groups where you do different activities the whole day to earn points and win and so on. That's exactly what they did. Okay, in stage one, they made this group identity and then perform some group work. Stage two, they were engaged in various camp game contests, and stage three, after a contest are done, they put the groups together, integrated and joint frameworks such that they don't fight with each other anymore and so on. Okay, what did they see? In stage two, when they're doing this contest between group, there was huge hostility and aggressive behavior against the outgroup members by both the groups. You can see that these rattlers are saying, eagles, you may win, but we will give you a hell of a lot of fight. Okay, this is a picture from 1954. So the effect of identity that brought escalation and conflict among otherwise homogeneous subjects. These are all pre-teenage white boys. Okay? Question is, previously there was no fight between those boys. You just put some identity, you put them in a contest and they start fighting. Can existing conflict history make it worse? So Diab tried to find that out. What happens if these people already had some existing conflict history? So he replicated this Roberts cave experiment in Lebanon with 10 Christian and 8 Muslim preteen boys. Okay, divided equally into 2 groups. In each group, there are 5 Christian and 4 Muslims. Okay, remember at that time Lebanon had a history of fight between Muslims and Christians. However, they are mix of Christians and Muslims in each group. One group is called blue ghost, another is called red genies. In stage 2, in conflict stage like the previous one, there was a huge physical violent fight came out between the two. Not only just contest, like doing some job, they actually started fighting physically. So the stage 3 had to be cancelled. Surprisingly, the conflict broke out between the blue ghost and red genies, not between Christians and Muslims. So what it says is, well, there can be existing conflict, but when you make one group identity really salient, that we are blue, you are red, and all this, that can actually escalate conflict quite a lot. Okay, so these two are 2 psychology experiments that showed this kind of things can happen. Then comes Amartya Sen. Amartya Sener 1985 রিসার্চ ইকোনমিক্সের মধ্যে প্রথম আইডেন্টিটি নিয়ে কাজ। কিন্তু ওটার কথা বেশি লোক জানে না, সবাই জানে হচ্ছে 2007 বইটা। So Sen coined the idea of multi-dimensional identity, and this is a beautiful idea. So he says that individual can have various characterized into various group. আমার অনেকগুলো আইডেন্টি থাকতে পারে। আমি বলতে পারি যে আমি একটা মেল, আমি বলতে পারি মিডল এজ, আমি বাঙালি, আমি ভারতীয়, আমি দক্ষিণ এশিয়ান, আমি এথেইস্ট, আমার অনেক রকম আইডেন্টি থাকতে পারে। কিন্তু যখন একটা আইডেন্টিটি খুব প্রকট হয়ে যায়, যখন সেলিয়েন্ট হয়ে যায়, তখন সেটার জন্য কনফ্লিক্ট হতে পারে। উনি বলেছিলেন যে so I have seen neighbors deciding against each other for years, nothing happened. Suddenly the identity of Hindu and Muslim become really salient, and then they start fighting. Kaushik Boshu also notes that we do not see conflict between short and tall people. Okay, it's classification. We can say that, oh, you are identified as short, you are identified as tall, but we don't see that they are fighting, right? He also said that we don't see people who are who has a lot of hair versus who are bald. We don't see any fight between them. However, when we look at Hindus, Muslims, black, white, we see fight. Then that's a problem, right? Because what Sen and Basu, they both are saying is some identities matter more than some other identity. And which identities matter more? The real ones, not the artificial ones. However, Diab showed that he just made artificial blue ghost, red genie, and that had quite a lot of fight. So it's opposite to what Sen is saying, right? And this is where I have this paper where I try to find out who is right, Sen or Diab. Okay? We run an experiment and try to find out. So what do we do? We try to find out, is Sen right? We know that introduction of real or artificial identity brings in group out group discrimination. But what happens when we try to look at conflict, not discrimination, conflict, and look at different levels of identities? Okay, let's skip this theory part. We have some theoretical background, but let's skip this theory part and let's just say what the game is about. So there will be 2 groups. Okay, it's group, 2 groups. This group will have 3 people, 3 group members. The other group will also have 3 group members. They will fight for a common value prize of 40 points. Okay, 40 points would be, you can be 40 rupees or whatever. So what they are going to do, each group member have some money. they can put that money in groups, group fund. Okay, suppose I spend 10, you spend 20, somebody else spend 30. So our group money would be 10 plus 20 plus 30, that is total 60. Okay, now it's like many different states are giving money. When there was a fight between India and Pakistan in Kargil, many different states, they actually gave money to the central government so that it can be the war can be funded. It's like that. Okay, 3 people giving money for the group fund. So both of them are doing. Now what determines who is going to win, which group is going to win? Well, it's like a lottery. If I spend, my group spends more, I have higher chance of winning. If your group spends more, you have higher chance of winning. And how is it lottery? Suppose our group overall spends 100. Okay, our group spends 100 and your group spends 200. So my probability of winning would be 100 divided by 100 plus 200, 300. So 100 divided by 300 is 1/3. And your group probability of winning would be 200 divided by 300, 2/3. Why? We spent 100. So as if we bought 100 lottery tickets. You spent 200, as if you bought 200 lottery tickets. We put all the lottery tickets together, pick up randomly one. If it's my ticket, then my group wins. If it's your ticket, then your group wins. Okay. So this is an easy way to make people understand and run. That's not very important. Important is the different treatments that we are running. There's a baseline treatment in which the contest is run between 3 white people versus 3 East Asian people. Okay. Whites versus East Asian, like Chinese, Japanese, and so on. But they had no idea that it's 3 white versus 3 East Asian, because what happened is we invited those subjects, they came, they sat in the laboratory and they are playing like video game. They have no idea. They just know that, oh, you are matched with 2 other people in your own group and running against 3 other people. But we did not tell them, you know what? You are actually whites and they are actually East Asian. We did not tell them. They had no idea. Then we did exactly the same as above. We actually told them, you guys are white, 3 whites fighting against 3 East Asian. Those 3 East Asian fighting against 3 whites. Okay. And the last case, we did like the we told the Asians, you guys are blue, other guys are green. And we told the other people that, okay, you whites, we didn't tell them you're whites. We said you are green and these people are blue. Okay. So let me clarify properly. In a treatment in which real identity is available, in which these 3 white people are fighting against these 3 Asians for a prize. Okay. And they know that we are white, we are fighting against Asians. In color treatment, instead of white, we instead of telling that you are white, we said you are the green group and these people are the blue group, and so on and so forth. And we also changed this one such that there is no group. In some other cases, we said you are the green group, you are the blue group. Okay. So this is the color treatment. And in baseline or anonymous treatment, white people are fighting against Asian people, but they have no idea what the identity is. Okay. So what do we expect from Amartya Sen? Amartya Sen will say that these people, where they have no idea, they will not fight as much. Where we put red and green and blue, it will not be any different from not telling anything. However, once we tell them their real identity, they will fight a lot. And what we see that in baseline, when they have no idea, their level of fighting is around 35. When we give them color, it becomes a bit higher, 38, but it's not statistically different. But when you tell them race, it becomes 46. And over the time, they played it for 20 periods. You can see that when we tell them race, they consistently fight higher than the other 2. What does it mean? It means that, well, Diab's result was very specific with only a few students and so on, and because they are face to face and so. But if we have proper control, then Sen is right. Real identity matters. Salience of real identity makes fight quite high, but not the minimal ones. And why do we see that? Well, if you are in a group in which if your group wins, that means everybody wins. There's a chance that you will free ride. You will let your group members spend a lot of resources and make your group win, and you're just going to free ride. That does not happen much when you tell them they are race. People don't free ride much. This is the CDF. In other cases, people free ride much more. And Suraj Chakraborty and others, they ran similar kind of thing with between Hindus and Muslim in the borderline of a border area of West Bengal and Bangladesh, and they found similar kind of result. I think I'm going to skip those, and the very last thing I'm going to say is Abink and others, they tried to find out what determines this kind of fight. Is it because you love your own group or because you hate the other group? And they said that you cannot take these two out. Those two are together, which is called parochial altruism. A combination of in-group love and out-group hate determines how people are fighting in a group. Okay. This is another experiment that I ran, but I'm going to skip this one and go here. Okay. So what did we talk now? Existing studies of identity and conflict show us a lot of result. However, they usually look at unidimensional effort. They look at, we are fighting for one prize and done. All the empirical and experimental studies all do that. However, India, when fighting against Pakistan, they will be fighting both in land, in air, as well as in sea. So trying to look at what happens if you look at different kind of dimension, people have not done it. So if you are interested, you can look at that. In the literature, they also view the parties engaged in conflict as similar. It means both are fighting to win some prize. But that is not the case all the time. Many a time, when two different identity groups are fighting, one is just trying to defend themselves and another is just trying to go and attack, like what happened in Gujarat like a couple of decades back. That is not covered properly. How you can endogenously determine your identity to go and fight, that people have not done much. There is only one paper. Okay. And there is another thing that is going to be really important, and that's my last comment before I finish, is many of the time there is affirmative action. Affirmative action means the government and policymakers sometimes try to help the people who are behind in the society. However, that can also bring in conflict, identity-driven conflict. Girard, she wrote a very nice paper with Indian data, showed that when affirmative action, this kind of extra help that are given in the lower caste area in India, the number of lower caste people getting murdered also went up. So it shows that there is some kind of relationship between people don't like that weaker part of the society getting too much support. They try to go for conflict for that. So if you are a policymaker, you have to look at that, make sure that that does not happen. And if you want to look at this survey, it's here and the link is also here, so you'll be able to look at. Thanks.
স্যার এবার আপনি বললেন বললে আমি কোয়েশ্চেনগুলো এক এক করে একটু বলতে পারি।
হ্যাঁ, আবার আগেও বলতে পারতে, অসুবিধা নেই, বল।
না না, আসলে এত সুন্দর প্রেজেন্টেশন হচ্ছিল আমি আর আপনাকে থামাইনি। প্রথম প্রশ্ন হচ্ছে, হোয়াট ইজ মিন্ট বাই আইডেন্টিটি ইন ইকোনমিক্স? হাউ আর আইডেন্টিটি অ্যান্ড ইকোনমি রিলেটেড?
এটা প্রথমে ছিল একদম। So the sense of oneself, a significant, essentially who you think you are and who you think other people think you are. Okay, so this particular definition comes from Akerlof and Cranton. Akerlof is actually a Nobel laureate economist. He brought in this definition, but it fits really well with the way we talk. Okay, although the concept started with Teufel, who is psychologist, but this definition comes from Akerlof. Oh, I forgot to mention that this is one area which got extreme importance in economics in recent years, since I would say last hardly 20 years. 3 Nobel laureates, Akerlof, Amartya Sen, and Tiron, work in this area, in how identity make us feel different, the way we behave, fight, and all this. Okay. I'm not sure if that was good enough to answer, but yeah.
Next question is what is the relationship between identity and conflict?
Complicated. So as I try to cover, this is a huge area and many different people worked on this. A large part says that different identity should make people fight more, but what exactly is part of identity? Is it fractionalization or polarization or um, something else? That depends on the structure of the society. If there is already inequality, then it's a different one. If there is too much fractionalization, it's a different one, and so on and so forth. Um, However, in a very simple setup, like what I did in my experiment, it shows that real identity and difference in real identity increases conflict. But again, it's a very stylized setup in the laboratory. In when you go to a field, it depends on the particular setup that you are looking at.
The next question is what is meant by identity in economics?
No, I think I answered that one, right?
Sorry, sir.
I already answered that one. What is meant by identity in economics?
Oh, okay. Uh, Next question is how does identity impact conflict?
How again? Those. I think this would be. I think the empirical studies would say something about that. So um, again, depending on which particular type of identity you're looking at, fractionalization or polarization or something else, and what kind of conflict you are looking at, depending on that, the answer might be quite different. So fractionalization might be quite important in terms of identity. Fractionalization might be quite important in Africa, might not be in India. So it depends on what background you are looking at, what current economic setup you are looking at, and all this.
The next question is what is identity based conflict?
So identity-based conflict is again when we are looking at a conflict in which the main reason for the conflict is the difference in the engaged parties' identities, then is identity-based conflict. However, as I showed with some of the results, many a time you cannot distinguish between identity-based and economic-based conflict. For example, think about the paper by Debraj Rai and Mitra and Rai, that paper. So you can call it identity-based conflict because this between Hindus and Muslim, but it turns out to be the case that it's about the Muslim people are earning more, spending more, and as a result, you are getting this conflict. So again, so there is a joke about economists. Economists always say that to answer anything, on one hand we have this, but on the other hand we have that. So one American president said, "I want an economist with only one hand." Unfortunately, I cannot have only one hand because the results are quite complicated. So you have to say that depending on the situation, you have different things.
The next question is অরিজিৎ চক্রবর্তী প্রশ্ন করছেন is identity always divided in subset?
সাবসেট আমার মনে হয় বলতে চাইছেন যে ডিফারেন্ট ডাইমেনশনস মানে ইয়েস আমি যেটা বলছিলাম ওই মানে শেলের থিওরি যেমন যে ইউ ক্যান হ্যাভ you can have identity in many different dimensions. You can have identity as আমি পুরুষ, এটা একটা আইডেন্টিটি। আমি বাঙালি, এটা একটা আইডেন্টিটি। আমি ভারতীয়, এটা একটা আইডেন্টিটি। হুম, এরকম মানে অথবা আমি একাডেমিশিয়ান, এটা একটা আইডেন্টিটি। তার জন্য এগুলো আলাদা আলাদা আছে, কিন্তু তার মানে এটা না যে একটার সঙ্গে আরেকটার কোনো ইন্টারসেকশন নেই। এরকম হতেই পারে যে আমি বাঙালি পুরুষ, সেটা একটা আইডেন্টিটি, মানে দুটোর মধ্যে ইন্টারসেকশন আছে। কিন্তু মুশকিলটা হয়, আমি যেহেতু কনফ্লিক্টের উপর ফোকাস করছি, মুশকিলটা হচ্ছে যে যখন একটা আইডেন্টিটি খুব প্রকট হয়ে যায়, খুব সেলিয়েন্ট হয়ে যায়, তখন কনফ্লিক্ট হয়। আদারওয়াইজ ওগুলো ডিফারেন্ট সেট আছে, যে ডিফারেন্ট সাবসেট উইথ ইন্টারসেকশন আছে, কিন্তু দ্যাট শুড নট মেক আ বিগ ডিফারেন্স। সেলিয়েন্স ইজ হোয়াট মেক্স দ্য ডিফারেন্স।
Next question is identical conflict will be deduct through liberalization?
এটা তো ঠিক রিলেটেড না, কারণ ইউ ক্যান থিঙ্ক অ্যাবাউট, মানে লিবারালাইজেশন বলতে কি, মানে ইকোনমিক লিবারালাইজেশন, না এডুকেশনাল লিবারালাইজেশন, না কি, মানে অর ওভারঅল লিবারালাইজেশনের সঙ্গে আইডেন্টিটি রিলেটেড যে আমি যে ওগুলো করলাম, তার খুব একটা মানে এফেক্ট সেরকম কিছু নেই। until unless you assume যে লিবারালাইজেশন হওয়ার জন্য হঠাৎ করে আম, মানে গ্রোথ অনেক বেড়ে গেছে, ওয়েলফেয়ার বেড়ে গেছে, হুইচ ওয়াজ ট্রু ইন মিড 90s অ্যান্ড সো অন আনটিল নাও। হ্যাঁ, সেক্ষেত্রে আইডেন্টিটি কমবে, কারণ সবাই দেখিয়েছে যে অ্যাজ মানে আইডেন্টিটি রিলেটেড কনফ্লিক্ট কমে যায়, মানে যখন সবারই ইয়ে বাড়ছে, কে বলে পারচেজিং পাওয়ার এবং ওয়েলফেয়ার সব বাড়ছে, তখন কনফ্লিক্ট কম হয়। এবার লিবারালাইজেশন হওয়ার জন্য যদি সেটা হয়, তাহলে হ্যাঁ কমবে। কিন্তু অ্যাট দ্য সেম টাইম বিইং লিবারাল, বিইং কনজারভেটিভ, বা বিইং লিবারালাইজেশন ভার্সেস আদার, মানে সেটা একটা আইডেন্টিটি। কিন্তু মানে আমার মনে আছে, এবং এখনো আছে নিশ্চয়ই, মানে প্রো লিবারালাইজেশন, অ্যান্টি লিবারালাইজেশন, এইভাবে দুটো আলাদা আইডেন্টিটি হতে পারে, তাদের মধ্যে কনফ্লিক্ট হতে পারে। সুতরাং লিবারেশন হলে কমবে না, সেটা একটা মানে বেশ কমপ্লিকেটেড কোশ্চেন। সরি।
স্যার একজন ফিডব্যাক লিঙ্কটা চাইছে একটু।
কিসের লিঙ্ক?
ফিডব্যাক লিঙ্ক লিখেছে, হয়তো কিছু আপনি বলেছিলেন।
ফিডব্যাক? কোনটা ফিডব্যাক লিঙ্ক? আমি আসলে আমি না এটা কোনোদিন করিনি স্ট্রিমইয়ার্ডে।
না, আপনি
প্রকাশ
কিছু
পেয়েছি বলতে পারেন।
লিঙ্কের কথা বলেছিলেন?
ও না, ফিডব্যাক লিঙ্ক না, আমি বলেছিলাম হচ্ছে যে আমার আম, এইখানে,
হ্যাঁ, হ্যাঁ।
আচ্ছা আমি একটা কাজ করি, ওই মানে ওই আমার বুঝতে পেরেছি, ওই ইয়ের লিঙ্কটা চেয়েছে বোধহয়।
হুম, হুম।
আমার সার্ভের লিঙ্কটা বোধহয় চেয়েছে। আমি আমি একটা কাজ করছি এখানে, কি করে দেব? এখানে আমি আমি কিছু লিখতে পারি
এখানে
লেখার জায়গা আছে?
এখানে আপনার কাছে ডান দিকে কোনো ওই চ্যাট উইন্ডো দেখাচ্ছে?
হ্যাঁ, একটা কমেন্টস আছে, কমেন্টস বলে একটা আছে, কিন্তু সেখানে আমার লেখার কিছু জায়গা নেই।
লেখার কিছু জায়গা নেই, আচ্ছা। আচ্ছা, প্রাইভেট চ্যাট বলে কোনো উইন্ডো আছে
হ্যাঁ,
ওখানে?
প্রাইভেট চ্যাট আছে একটা।
হ্যাঁ, ওখানে দিতে পারেন, হ্যাঁ।
আচ্ছা, আমি দিয়ে দিলাম, প্রাইভেট চ্যাটে পাঠিয়ে দিয়েছি।
হুম, হুম। আমি এটা কপি করে কমেন্টে দিয়ে দিচ্ছি।
আচ্ছা, মানে এখানে আমি এতক্ষণ ধরে যেগুলো বললাম সেগুলো সব এই মানে এই লিঙ্কে পাওয়া যাবে, এবং এটা ফ্রি টু ডাউনলোড। সো
আচ্ছা, আচ্ছা। হ্যাঁ, আমি দিয়ে দিয়েছি। এছাড়া স্যার যদি আর কোনো কিছু প্রশ্ন আসে তাহলে আমি আপনাকে ওই মেইল করে দেব
হ্যাঁ, অবশ্যই।
আমাদের রাষ্ট্রবিজ্ঞান চর্চাকেন্দ্র আইডি থেকে। আপাতত আর কিছু প্রশ্ন নেই। স্যারকে অনেক ধন্যবাদ যে স্যার এতক্ষণ
আমি
ধরে
একটু আগে শেষ
প্রশ্নগুলোর
করা উচিত
উত্তর
ছিল, কিন্তু
দিয়েছেন।
মানে একটু মানে ১ ঘন্টা থেকে বেশি হয়ে গেল। যাক।
না, না, আলোচনা করতে করতে হতেই পারে। আলোচনা করতে করতে একটু হয়ে যায়। সেটাতে কোনো অসুবিধা নেই। স্যার এতক্ষণ ধরে এতগুলো প্রশ্নের উত্তর দিয়েছেন ধৈর্য ধরে, সেটা একটা বিষয়। এতক্ষণ ধরে মানে এত সুন্দর একটা বিষয় অনেকক্ষণ ধরে বুঝিয়ে বলেছেন, এবং স্ক্রিন শেয়ার করে করে একদম খুব স্পেসিফিক করে করে বোঝানোর চেষ্টা করেছেন।
না, না, আমার একটু
এবং
চিন্তা ছিল যে, কারণ আম, তোমরা তো বোধহয় বেশিরভাগই পলিটিক্যাল সায়েন্সের না?
হ্যাঁ, হ্যাঁ,
মানে
হ্যাঁ।
আমি ব্যাকগ্রাউন্ড কিছু জানি না, ফলে মানে আমি এমন কিছু করতে চাইনি যেটা তোমরা খুব বোর হয়ে যাবে।
হ্যাঁ, এটা ঠিক। কারণ ইকোনমিক্সে একটু বেশি অঙ্ক-টঙ্ক থাকে। তো সেই জন্য লোকজন ভয় পেয়ে যায়। আমি নিজেও ভয় পেয়ে যাবো আরকি। আমরা আশা করব স্যারের কাছে যে স্যার আবার অন্য কোনো দিন অন্য কোনো টপিক নিয়ে এভাবে আসবেন এবং আমাদের আরো সুন্দর করে বুঝিয়ে দেবার চেষ্টা করবেন। আজকের মতো এইটুকুই এবং সবাইকে অনেক ধন্যবাদ জানাই। আমাদের পাশে থাকবেন, এভাবেই আমাদের এগিয়ে নিয়ে যাবেন এবং আমাদের যে লক্ষ্য ছাত্রছাত্রীদের পাশে থাকা এবং তাদের সাহায্য করা। আমাদের আমাদের কিছু আমাদের যে এত কিছু আয়োজন, আমাদের এই আয়োজন থেকে একটুখানি তেও যদি আপনাদের কারোর কিছু উপকার হয় সেটাও আমাদের খুব ভালো লাগবে। আপনারা যদি কোনো বিশেষ টপিক শুনতে চান, সেটাও আমাদের জানাতে পারেন। সেরকমভাবে আমরা আমাদের স্যারদের অ্যাপ্রোচ করার চেষ্টা করব। এবং যদি কারোর কোনো প্রশ্ন থাকে সেটাও আমাদের বলবেন। আমরা চেষ্টা করব আপনাদের সাহায্য করার। সবাই ভালো থাকবেন, সুস্থ থাকবেন। আজকের মতো এখানেই শেষ হচ্ছে।
তোমাদের অনেক ধন্যবাদ।